All right. Good morning, everybody. Let's try this again. I'd like to welcome you all to the beginning of the phase two competition or phase two portion of the head competition. I'd like to congratulate all the teams for submitting their phase two posters and working through the night, many of you. We are down to 7 teams. We did have one team withdraw last night. So there will be 7 presentations today. We'll have 4 in the morning, then we'll take a break for lunch, and then we'll have 3 in the afternoon. The judges will deliberate, and then we will have an announcement of the results at 4 p.m. We'll live stream the announcement. With that being said, I do want to introduce our judges. We have an expert panel of judges here. We have Paul Gallagher, who's joining us from Shopify. So he has a master's in analytics. We have Shirin Jabari, who's joining us as an analytics professional from Scotiabank. She did her master's at McMaster, and she has she's also an alumni from Mohawk College, so we appreciate that. We have Juliana Petrovich. We all know Juliana from her presentation yesterday. She's working at the City of Hamilton, so she's our parking subject matter expert. And she also is an alumni of Mohawk College, which we'd like to see. And lastly, we have Vivek Patel. And Vivek is a senior manager. Sorry, Vivek, I missed the title again, but you're with Stridley Solutions, and he's an expert in analytics, specializing a lot in Microsoft products, Power BI, and as well as working with other database solutions. Vivek, you please clarify me.
Yeah, it's a senior director, Stridley Solution, and a Microsoft MVP.
Thank you so much, Vivek. My apologies about that. All right, so the agenda today, everybody, is teams will be monitored for their time. They'll have 20 minutes to deliver their presentation. After that 20 minutes, there will be a 10-minute Q&A. And with that, I think we're ready to begin. So at this point, I'd like to introduce the team MC01 for the first presentation of the day.
Thank you, Steve. I just wanted to quickly introduce ourselves individually as Team MC01. We have myself, Sebastian Bravo, Natalie Aranda, Jolly James, and Sophia Valdezan. So I wanted to jump in quickly to just briefly describe the data cleaning process as part of phase 2. The phase 2 problem set detailed that we had to isolate the data for the months of September and October for the years of 2019 to 2021. Part of this process was to remove transactions that did not fit that purview. So we had to modify our existing data set from phase 1 to remove all months other than September and October. But we also had to transform the new data set we received as part of phase 2, which was the 2019 CalA data set. So part of this was to remove transactions that were noted on the additional phase 2 lot information file that was noted as being incomplete, as this was not going to be used in our analysis. We also flagged the lots, any records that contain lots that were noted to have partial data or complete data, so our analysis be a bit more complete. And to match our already existing data set from phase 1, we derived fields for month, day of week, duration, minimum minutes, and all day minutes for these lots, just so when we merged it, everything was matched up in terms of the fields. So some of our findings during this process was that for lots 1DU, there was no data from October 5 to October 24 of 2019. And for lots 2B and 33, there were no transactions for it until November 2019. I'll pass it over to Natalie Aranda to explain the data modeling process.
Thank you, Sebastian. So the data modeling process consisted of deriving fields to show hours in which a vehicle was parked during certain hours of the day. which means the occupancy by hours. We did that using a Python script. We also calculated the occupancy by weekday for a more macro view to analyze the occupancy of individual lots. Finally, we use a Python script to calculate the number of weekly users. Sophia will now explain how we got our numbers.
So the occupancy of time of day. A count of each hour was taken by first comparing the entry time with the hour of analysis and verifying that if a user was in the parking lot at that hour, a count of 1 was placed under that hour. Then the exit time was compared with the hour of analysis, and an indicator variable of 1 was again placed in the column of hour of analysis. If the vehicle was found to not be in the lot at a particular hour, then the column was filled with a 0. In this way, each row was populated with a sequence of 1s and 0s, verifying the hours the vehicle was in the lot. So if the vehicle was there from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., the row would have all 0s under every hour except for 1s at 9 a.m., 10 a.m., and 11 a.m. Once the sequence was established, we could accurately measure the number of cars in the lot, taking into account that after the vehicle exited, the count would be altered. So the next slide shows the occupancy by time of day and week for all the users. If you look at the first row, you can see that the user entered at some time at 5 a.m. and exited after the 18th hour of the day. Next slide. The occupancy by day of week was then calculated. Once the occupancy by time of day was established, it was a lot simpler to obtain the occupancy by day of week. The data was grouped by lot number and day to get an aggregation of the count for that day for each lot. Then, using Tableau, the day of week was extracted from each day and plotted with the hour of the day. The average number of cars per day was calculated and plotted. Next slide. We can see here that the occupancy by day of week is now showing a lot larger numbers. It's not just 0s and 1s. And that's how the data was aggregated. Next slide. Now we will look at the results, and I pass it over to Jolly to start talking about the users.
Thank you, Sophia. So after we did the data modeling and data cleaning, we wanted to look at users and see if there were any patterns from 2019, 2020, or 2021. So we looked at the top 5 users by duration in 3 of those years. And what was interesting to see was that in 2019, 3 out of 5 of those users spent most of their time in lot 80 and 36. And this could show that they were there for work because they spent most of their time in those parking lots. And in the next year, 2020, the next slide, we can see that although our top users are using more parking lots, they're spending most of their time in specific parking lots as well. This time around is in lot 81 on lot 8. We can see that 3 of our users spend most of their time there, which could indicate the same thing, that they were there for work. In 2021, the next slide, we can see that all of our 5 users, our top 5 users by duration, spend most of their time in one particular lot, lot 8. And from this we can see from the entire data set that all our users, our top 5 users, most of our top 5 users are spending most of their time in the same specific lots, which would indicate that they walk around the same area of those lots. Next slide. So after this, after we saw that our users are spending most of their time in specific lots, we wanted to do some analysis into weekly users. So we found that in 2019, 31.88% of our users were weekly users. In 2020, in the heat of the pandemic, that number decreased to 13.64%. However, in 2021, it surpassed that proportion in 2019 to an all-time high of 34.24%. Now, this proportion includes users who use the parking lots at least 4 times a week, at least one week out of the year, out of that time period, of those 2 months, and paid the all-day rate at least once. Now, unfortunately, there wasn't enough time to explore these users in great detail, but I will now pass it over to Sebastian to speak more about the lots.
Thank you, Charlie. We will begin our discussion on the lots, beginning with lot 40, which is the largest lot and is defined by its closeness to the City Hall. It had a high amount of occupancy from Monday to Friday, mainly for office workers. I'm just going to switch over to the next slide just to show it's Monday to Friday occupancy by day, week of hours. And as we can see on Saturday, it drops off. We could most likely correlate this to being used for recreational usages. However, what's more interesting about this lot is that it was quite noticeably impacted by COVID in terms of usage. We defined the number of users staying more than 500 minutes as regular users. And we can see a huge drop off in regular users when you go from 2019 to the future years of 2020 and 2021, which is how we attribute it to COVID and possibly remote work as well. The next discussion will be done by Natalie on lot 82.
So the lot 82 is located close to the Hamilton General Hospital. And as we can see in the next slide, due to the location of this parking lot showed a high amount of occupancy during all day of the weeks, from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And it is due because it's really close to the hospital and people who are using it's people who goes there. So it also showed a considered amount in the next slide. It also showed a considered amount of users paying an all-day rate and staying more than 500 hours. We also could see that this parking lot was not affected by COVID because all the numbers continued the same for time pre-COVID and now. So now Sophia will continue with parking lot 36.
Thank you, Natalie. Lot 36 is located close to the Hamilton Farmers Market behind Jackson Square. It has a high amount of occupancy Saturday mornings for farmers market customers. We can see an increase in regular users for October 20th to 23rd of 2020. If we go to the next slide, here the graph is showing that on Saturdays, there's a very high rate of usage, as well as throughout the week, but not as high as it is on Saturdays. Next slide, please. Then we can see here that there was a high rate of usage or a peak in October, from October 20th to the 23rd. Next slide, please. We can also see here that when we analyze by those 3 days by duration over the hours, the duration overall seemed to be about the same, indicating that the lot was really, really high populated throughout that time. I will now pass it over to Jolly to talk about lot 33.
Thank you. So lot 33 is located on James Street, and it's located on the mountain. But what is interesting about this lot is, besides the fact that it didn't have the data between September 2019 and October 2019, it is also located at recreational purposes center. So around that parking lot, you can find restaurants, you can find a spa, you can find a church. And it has a high occupancy during the week from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And it has a little increment in activity from Tuesday to Friday. If we see on the next slide, we can see that there's a steady increase from Monday through Saturday. Now, this shows that most of our users our prime users for this lots are using it predominantly on Saturday for the weekends. So we can attribute this to parkings for church or the restaurants or the spas. If we see on the next slide, we can also see that from 2020 to 2021, this parking lot had a very steady amount of users. It didn't change so much, and we can attribute this to the fact that it was still close to places that people still had to go to, and so it remained steady. I will now give it to Sebastian to speak about lot 2B.
Thank you, John. And analysis on lot to be found that it was quite a bit different than other lots in that it was more active on Saturdays, suggesting that users attended the farmers market, despite this lot being noted in the phase 2 problem set as only being at 50% capacity during that time. We can see from this quick graph just the increase in occupancy on Saturday compared to all other days of the week. It's noted that just like the previous lot, no records existed for this in 2019, just like we noted back when we were discussing how we cleaned the data. Another thing about this is that going from 2021 from 2020, we observed a decreased number of regular users when observing the same period of time of September and October. I'll now pass it on back to Natalie. Natalie?
Go.
Sorry, thank you, Sebastian. And now I'm going to talk about lot 1DU. This lot is located in Dundas area, and this lot sees a high amount of occupancy throughout the days of the week, as we can see in the next slide. These users can be described as a combination of people working there and people coming in quickly. And also in the next slide, we can see that despite the high occupancy, few users exceed staying more than 500 minutes. This lot did not present users staying more than 500 minutes for October 2021. Sophia will now continue with our conclusions.
Thank you, Natalie. Sorry about that. Conclusions. Overall, we can see that the 6 parking lots analyzed are very high traffic. Particularly lot number 40 is the most high traffic on Monday to Friday at approximately 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. It was interesting to see the impact COVID-19 had on the usage of this lot. It was the most impacted. We believe that this is because the users that were using these lots pre-COVID were most likely workers that were working at City Hall. It should be noted that this lot is massive with a capacity of 635 parking spots. This lot has never been filled, even pre-COVID, when it saw its largest numbers of approximately 175. The second most high traffic parking lot is lot 82, with the largest average of 16 cars in the lot. This lot is most used Tuesday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Users are most likely going to the hospital to visit family and friends while saving money, as the parking lot fee for the hospital is much higher, with a daily rate of $20 compared to $12 for lot 82. The average number of users paying the daily rate is approximately 25 per day in lot 82. Lots 33, 2B, and 36 see high usage rates on Saturdays. This is to be expected, as these lots are surrounded by social activities such as churches, the farmers market, restaurants, and Jackson Square. Users of these lots are most likely spending recreational weekend time in the area. Finally, lot 1DU seems to have many quick users popping in and out. Thank you very much for listening to our presentation.
All right, thank you for that, that great presentation. I'm now going to open up the floor to the judges and see if they have any questions for you.
I think I can, okay, Juliana.
Yeah, Juliana, yeah.
Thanks, guys. It was really interesting to see like some of the different behaviors in the lots, which was the purpose of the project. Part of phase 2 was asking you to calibrate occupancy based on by removing the SKUs from the minimum and maximum payment times. Did you guys have a chance to do that, or did you run out of time on that?
No, unfortunately, like we sent an email to you guys and it was the middle of the night. We tried to understand what you guys were trying to say, but we did not understand it, unfortunately, to be completely transparent in that aspect. We did the best we could with what we had.
So mainly you did all the analysis based on number of transactions, but not the duration, right? Sorry, you are on mute.
We use the duration for the parking lots because when we populated the matrix to calculate the hours that the person is staying in the parking lots, we use the start day, the start hour, and the end and the exit hour. So we we use also the duration. We calculate by hour the duration in all the parking lots.
One thing I notice in your graph, and mainly when you are trying to show some story, when you are trying to tell the story, what I notice is your x-axis, you have not put any title, most of the graph. I'm not saying all, but most of the graph. So sometimes it confuses the consumer of that insight. Is there any particular reason?
For example, we can see, let me project this.
Not only the x-axis, but some of the graph, around 50%, you didn't even put the legion. You are showing different colors, but what that color represent, you have not shown.
Okay, yes. Yes, it was a mistake. It is the number of the month. So index axis. Let me here share my screen. Oh, Sebastian, can you share your screen?
Yeah, I can do that. I was gonna ask you.
Can you go to slide 22, please?
Yeah, I'm just gonna back up this presentation a bit. Like here?
22, slide 22.
Yeah, here you have put, but if you go to all the previous graphs, it wasn't there. And when you show difference in color, when user, the consumer of your information, always look for what that different color interprets. So it's good idea to always have a legend. If you don't have a legend, have clear message at the top that what that represents.
So I believe the legend was just cut off when we tried to import the image into the PowerPoint. But those rainbow graphs where you see all those different colors are representing the hours of the day. And
no, your information overall, all the graphs, information is excellent. And so I'm not complaining on that. Only thing is this is competition, but it is not only competition when you have people who are already in industry give you like what could be, what you can do better. That's what I'm.
I think it was just one of those things you can, that was just a mistake that happened transferring it over to the presentation just in a short time period. It was on crunch, but it is something to take note of, yeah.
My last question is, why did you select that 6 parking lot? Because those 6 parking lot are busiest one. The more opportunity for city of Hamilton could be which one are underutilized. Right?
So
how you can utilize more. So why did you select those 6?
So the poster actually specifically asked for those 6 lots to be analyzed. And so that's why we chose those 6 lots.
Okay, thank you. That's all from my side.
Sharon, I think you had a question or two you wanted to ask.
No, I'm good. It was actually answered as one of the other judges asked. It was on the legend and the coloring of the graph. So okay. I have, thank you.
Okay, Paul.
Yeah, so I got a couple points. So the first one, I just wanted to say, like, I like the way you guys did your data cleaning, kind of using the binary, 1 or 0 to kind of do your timestamps. One suggestion I'll make for you maybe in the future, if you were to do this again, is instead of creating a column for every single hour, maybe look at using a timestamp column, so you'd only have 3 columns instead of having, I think you had 1 for every hour. What that'll help you do is if you ever needed to take this data set and join it in with a bunch of other data, it's much easier to do it off of 1 column than having a whole bunch. So I really like the way you did that. Was just one small thing I would suggest in the future. So that was just one point I wanted to make. And then I did have a question around, you guys had a recommendation on the City Hall lot showing that there was a big difference in occupancy versus capacity. Did you guys have a chance to take a look at if there was an opportunity to reduce the size of that lot, maybe to what size? And if you didn't, just maybe kind of top of your head, if you have any thoughts on, does it make sense for the city to reduce that lot, maybe sell some of that land off? Any thoughts on that?
Well, the actual lot itself is is really big, and it also is connected to City Hall itself. I don't believe they will alter that or sell any of that land. It actually has 2 levels. If you ever go to the actual lot, there's like a bottom part, and there's also a top part where there's even more parking area. So I think it's like a staple of the city. That's just my opinion though, but I don't really know, right?
Well, I think that's a good observation, right? Like the data is telling us one thing from my perspective, and I think you've done kind of that extra piece on, well, there's a practical application to this, and I think that's important. So that actually does make a lot of sense. So thank you for that.
All right, I think that's all for the questions. I'd like to thank the group for their presentation, and that concludes finalist presentation number 1. We're going to close this session down, and we're going to move over into the next room for starting up finalist presentation number 2. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
team.
you.
That was great.